The chronological Bible reading for January 18th is Genesis chapters 19 through 21. Genesis 19 is interesting for lots of different reasons. We see these two angels who come to Sodom, want to spend the night in the city square, and Lot practically begs them, says, "No, you must stay with me." It's as if Lot knows what would happen had these men stayed in the city square. And I say men intentionally because the scripture in chapter 19 uses the words angel and men almost interchangeably to describe these individuals. Were they angels or were they men? Do angels just appear like men? Do they look that way all the time or just some of the time? But then why does the author call them men? Verse 12 says, "The men said to Lot." Verse 15 says, "At daybreak the angels urged Lot on." And the context shows it must be talking about the same individuals. I don't know about you, but I used to think that angels had two different classes, and they were either seraphim or cherubim, because the Bible talks about both of those. The cherubim, which is plural for cherub, are the guardians. The seraphim are the six-winged creatures that surround the throne of God, described in Isaiah and different prophetic literature. But I've come to realize that nowhere in Scripture does it say that cherubim are angels. Nowhere in Scripture does it say that seraphim are angels. And as we look at the meaning of the word angel in Scripture, it literally means messenger. And sometimes it refers to a man, a human, and sometimes it seems to refer to some heavenly creature who often appears as a man. There are two angels named for us in Scripture, and it seems that they have the appearance of men, and neither are they ever called seraphim or cherubim. Tragically, the men of the city are utterly depraved, and they have no regard for the desires of Job or the desires of his house guests, these two men/angels. It's strange to me that Job offered the men of the city his daughters. It's also sad how Lot went out to his sons-in-law, those who were betrothed to his two daughters, and tried to reason with them, "Come away with us, leave the city. It's about to be destroyed," but they thought he was joking, and so they were destroyed. Also destroyed was Lot's wife, who turned back to look after having been warned not to. They were told to run for their lives and don't look back. And I don't think it was so much about her physical act of looking back at the city that led to her being turned into a pillar of salt. But instead, I believe it was her longing to go back, her sadness about all she was giving up in order to carry on. Turning around to look back at what she was leaving behind was a lot like the Israelites complaining in the desert, saying, "I was better off as a slave in Egypt. At least I know what was expected of me each day. I had food to eat and a place to sleep. There was security in having a routine, even if I was a slave." Clearly, Sodom was a despicable place filled with people who had no regard for human life, no regard for different people having agency of themselves. These men who wanted to rape strangers were wicked, and they needed to face judgment. Sadly, it seems as though Lot's wife was happy in that place, and reading the story again today convicts my heart for all of the times that I've looked back at times in the past with fondness, thinking about how good I had it, even if I wasn't in the center of God's will. May God extend grace to me and to those of us who are so tempted to think that once we move over to where the greener grass is, it was actually much better where we were before. In chapter 20, Abraham and Sarah are back in the parched land of the Negev, and once again Abraham tells this king that his wife Sarah is just his sister, and she goes along with it. God protects Sarah through it, and Abraham gets rich because of it. But poor Abimelech receives a curse that is only healed after Abraham prays for him. God spoke to Abimelech in a dream, saying, "Do not touch that woman." When Abimelech says, "God, I didn't know I was lied to. I didn't do anything wrong," God says, "I kept you from sinning, and I kept you from touching her. Return her to the man she came from, and he will pray for you because he's a prophet, and then I will heal you." It seems as though God afflicted Abimelech with some disease, and it shows us a principle that oftentimes, or at least sometimes, when someone is sick, their sickness is a direct correlation to something they've done. In chapter 21, Isaac is born to Sarah. It's truly a miracle conception and birth. Isaac is the fulfillment of the promise God made to Abraham, saying, "I will make you a father of many nations." And at this point, Abraham's son of the slave woman, Ishmael, must go. It's sad to think about the relationships between all of these people. And the Bible doesn't go into how they felt and how they dealt with it and the trauma that was done to them. But we see that God provided for Ishmael and his mom. And it shows us how important it is that we wait on God's promises, because when we step out and act in the flesh, there are real consequences where real people, are injured by our sin. May God have mercy on us and on them, and may He bless you as you continue seeking Him. We'll see you tomorrow.